stage. So for today, right, we'll cover actually just the first and second noble truths. And the first sutta that we're covering is actually an excerpt from the Samyutta Nikaya 56, the 29th sutta. So it's SN 56.29, right? And this is really just the Buddha talking broadly about the Four Noble Truths. So I'm just reading this excerpt just to paint the context, right? So the Buddha says, and what bhikkhus and laypersons and bhikkhunis and all that is the noble truth to be fully understood. The noble truth of suffering is to be fully understood. The noble truth of the origin of suffering is to be abandoned. The noble truth of the cessation of suffering is to be realized. And the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering is to be developed. So what does this mean? The noble truth of suffering, right, is to be fully understood. Meaning that whatever suffering that you face in your life, right, the first instinctive response is, I don't want that to happen. I don't have that to happen. And you're actually not doing like what the Buddha actually says. Instead, when something happens to you, right, I'm going to use the four-letter word, when shit happens to you, right, you are actually, life is giving you the fertilizer, and instead of like you taking it and going to somebody else and go, here, have my shit, don't put it onto me, right? You're actually supposed to take it and understand, what is this? Why is this happening? What's the cause of all this? Right? So it's to be fully understood. The second noble truth, right, of the origin of suffering, right? And the origin of suffering, the cause of suffering, is wanting and craving. So wanting and craving, right, is to be abandoned. That's the second point here. The third noble truth of the cessation of suffering. So the third noble truth is, once you actually cease the origin of suffering, meaning that you actually like let go and you cease, you allow the wanting and craving to cease, then suffering actually ceases, right? So that noble truth, right, is actually to be realized, meaning you have to see for yourself, you have to actually experience it and actually experience it fully for yourself, right? And the fourth noble truth, the way leading to this cessation, which is the Eightfold Path, is to be developed. So this is what the Buddha actually says, right? And this, like I said, this is important to understand because otherwise I just tell you, oh, let's do the Eightfold Path. And then, okay, sure, like I do this, but why, right? There's no reason why. And this is actually the reason why, right? So going back so what exactly is this first noble truth of suffering? And this is what the Buddha actually says, right? I think this is important to cover and I'll explain why a little bit. So rebirth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, negativity, and distress is suffering. Experiencing what is unpleasant is suffering. Missing what is pleasing is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. So in short, actually the 5 components of existence, right, which I explained in a little bit, are also suffering. So then the Buddha actually goes, so this is Digha Nikaya number 22. Then the Buddha actually talks about like these things. So what is rebirth? And I think this is important to cover, right? Because there are some Buddhist traditions that talk about, oh, birth and death. They're talking about actually the birth of this moment and the death of that moment, or the arising of like the breath and then the passing away of the breath. And that's like the birth and death. That's what the Buddha is referring to. But this is what the Buddha actually said. And what is rebirth? In whatever type of beings, whatever species, there is rebirth, there is coming to be, there is coming forth, there's the appearance of the 5 components of existence, which I'll talk about in a little bit. There's the acquisition of the senses, the 6 senses, right? So your 6 senses will actually be like seeing, hearing, taste, touch, and also seeing, hearing, taste, touch, smell, and also the 6th sense of the mind, right? So you can see here that the Buddha is not talking about the arising and the passing of a moment or anything. He's actually talking about actual birth, a baby being born. That actually, right, important point, is suffering in and of itself, right? So this reminds me of this quote that I read just last night actually, where this American author called Mark Twain, I'm not sure if you are familiar with him. So he actually made a comment, and he said that the reason why people celebrate birthdays and they cry at funerals is because that they're not the party concerned. You're not the person involved. You're seeing it from a third party. So, but I thought that's actually quite wise and interesting because it's completely in line with like what the Buddha is saying. Birthdays, right? Actually, to be born, right? Why the baby cries? Hey, it's suffering, actually, to go through the womb and come out, right? And that actually is the first mistake that actually happens. And if some of you recall, like the last week when I spoke about cause and effect, beings are the owners of your karma. And if you're the owner of your karma and you are actually born, right? Being born is actually a mistake. It's a mistake that actually is the result of your past actions, actually, right? So birth is actually the suffering. So this is an important point, right? Aging, and how does the Buddha describe aging? He talks about there's aging, there's decrepitude, meaning that that your body is like breaking down. There's broken teeth, grey hair, wrinkled skin, shrinking with age, decay of the senses, meaning that your six senses are no longer as sharp as they used to be. So that's actually aging, and that's also suffering. Death. So related to the birth points, right? Is this talking about the passing of a moment? No. He's saying that there's passing away, there's demise, disappearance, death, dying, decrease, destruction of the five khandhas, and there's also the discarding of the body. So it's actually talking about actual dying, right? That's also suffering. Sorrow, right? Any kind of misfortune, anyone that's affected by something of a painful nature, there's sorrow, there's mourning, there's anguish, grief, unhappiness, that's called sorrow. Lamentation, any kind of misfortune, anyone that's affected by something of a painful nature, and there's crying out, there's weeping, there's making much noise for grief, that's called lamentation, right? What is pain? Pain is the painful feeling resulting from physical body contact, right? Unhappiness is from the painful mental feelings that arise, right? Distress, there's the anguish that arises when there's something of a painful and unpleasant nature, that's called distress. And what's experiencing what is unpleasant? Whoever has unwanted, disliked, unpleasant sight, sound, smells, taste, touch, or mind objects, meaning whatever that you don't want to experience, right, through all the six senses, or whoever meets those that you wish you harm, right, meaning that you meet your enemies and all that, right, that's called experiencing what's unpleasant, right? And then what's missing, what's pleasant? So again, the six senses, but you want that, right? And then that's no longer existing. That's missing what is pleasing. So these are actually like, actually if you think about it, this is actually the whole category of like suffering. And this is what you actually experience through your life, right? So how many of you, right, in your daily life, right, have never experienced anything of this description? Or even one of these things, you've never experienced any of these, like you've never experienced what is unpleasant. Everything has been like perfectly like sweet, as they say in like Hokkien, right? And nobody, right? And this is actually a very important truth. So what the Buddha describes as somebody I know, Sylvester, who was here the first week. So he actually made an interesting comment. He said, rather than talking about the Four Noble Truths, maybe it's better to translate it as the four realities, actually, because these are actually the realities of life. Right? The four realities of life that there is suffering, there's the arising of the suffering, right? There's the origin of that suffering, right? The arising of that. There is the ceasing of that. If the cause ceases, the effect will cease, and then there's that way leading to that ceasing. Right? So it's important for us to fully understand this, and this actually is a very important categorization for this. Next time that you experience this, ask yourself, is this what the Buddha is talking about? Right. So that's actually something important to talk about. So now I go on to the five khandhas, or the five components of existence. So this is also in Digha Nikaya 22. And this is the Ajahn Brahm translation. So how in particular are the five components of existence suffering? And they are as follows. The body, so this is frequently translated as form, right? I think that in Chinese they call it sing or se sometimes as well, right? So body, experience, so this is the Pali term is Vedana, right? So this is translated commonly as feeling, right? But this is a little bit of a wrong translation, because when people talk about feelings, they go, oh yeah, I feel like sad, I feel upset. But that's actually not the meaning of Vedana. Vedana is actually the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings, the sensations, right, from each of the 6 senses. So for example, with smells, right, there's something that smells fragrant, there's something that smells smelly, then there's the neutral smells. Sight, something is beautiful, or you're very attracted to that. Something is damn ugly, you know. And then there's the neutral sight that you see. Hearing, something's like, wow, it's very irritating, or you know, like very noisy, or something that's like very melodious, right? And then there's something that's very neutral. Touch, something that's very unpleasant, very rough, prickly, for example. There's something very smooth, very pleasant, and something very neutral, right? And I mentioned like all the different, like, so you get roughly that actually for each sense organ, right, there's something that's pleasant, there's something unpleasant, there's something like neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So that's actually what is meant by experience. But it also goes beyond that. It also actually refers to everything you experience in your life, right? So that's actually like experience, like Vedana. Perception, Sanya. So this one I'll cover like last. Will and other mental formations, right? Your volition. So what you want to do, right? I choose to come here on a Sunday talk, even though it's raining outside and there's a dog outside the front gate, right? And then there's consciousnesses. So oftentimes people translate this as consciousness, and then you just think only of the mental consciousness. But in reality, there's the consciousness that actually happens with each of the 5 senses as well, not just the mental, right? So an example of that would be when you meditate, right? I mean, next time you meditate, you just observe this for yourself. When you first close your eyes, you actually are seeing the inside of your eyelids, and if there's light, you actually see like a light reddish tinge, right? But 20 minutes in, right, you realize actually that whatever you are perceiving, right, is actually completely dark, or whatever it is, you no longer actually see that reddish tinge at all. It's the same thing with consciousness of the hearing. If you don't pay attention to it, right, for example, the aircon sound. Now that I mention it, right, you're paying attention to it. But previously it's been there throughout, but you never noticed it when I was talking, right? So it's the same thing, like every single one of these like senses, there's actually a consciousness attached to it. The reason why you are aware of it is because something changes. But the moment that it doesn't change, right, it's constant, then it just switches off. So I guess a bit like when my wife talks to me, sometimes I'll just switch off, right? So good thing she's not here, so I can say that. Yeah. So that's an example of like how actually each of these consciousnesses, right, are actually tied to the 6 senses, right? So these are the 5 components of existence, right? The body, experience, perception. Perception is actually what fills in. It's like the in between actually. So when you see something, right, you see a chair, and the perception will fill it up with like, oh, it's a yellow chair, it's dirty, it's clean, or whatever it is. So that's actually the perception. So what follows next, right, is actually from the Samyutta Nikaya 22.95, and this is the lump of foam, the similes that the Buddha used, right, for these 5 components of existence. And I found this very powerful, and I'll explain in a little bit why. So this is what the Buddha says, right? Suppose that this river Ganges, which is the main holy river in India, was carrying along a great lump of foam. A person with good sight would inspect and carefully investigate it, and it will appear to them to be void, hollow, and insubstantial. For what substance could there be with a mere lump of foam? And so too, whatever kind of body there is, right, whether it's past, future, or present, whether it's your own or is it like somebody else's, gross, meaning like very, prominent, right, or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, you inspect it, carefully investigate it, and it will appear to you like to be void, empty, and insubstantial. For what substance is there for? So, if I were to just take a pause here, right, you have your own body, right? We all have our bodies right here, right? And the Buddha is actually comparing it to a lump of foam. Actually, right, your body is actually very insubstantial. After a while, right, it will just pass on. It will last as long as a lump of foam on the river Ganges, meaning that in the broader time, in the larger time scale of like life, right, of like many lifetimes in samsara, right, actually your body doesn't last very long. And 70 years, we might think of it, 70, 80 years. I think the life expectancy in Singapore now is like 82 years or something like that. Right? 82 years, right, seems like it's a very long time when you're a 5-year-old. But ask anybody who's like close to that end of the life to tell you that actually it's a very, very short span of time. Right? And that's actually how the Buddha's talking about your body is literally just like a lump of foam, and it will just pass away very quickly. Right? And it's actually empty, it's actually very passing, very transient. There's nothing actually very substantial in it. Right? There's no permanent essence in this thing. So now the Buddha gives the analogy of like what is experience, right? And he says, suppose that it were raining, right? And big raindrops will fall, and a water bubble arises and bursts on the surface of the water, and then somebody inspects it, you find it also like void and all that stuff. So if I were so to whatever experience, right? If you think about your own experience, right? Next time that you eat, right? Just make this observation. Okay. Just observe for yourself, right, how before you went to have your meal, right, if it's a good restaurant, okay, go to a very good restaurant, because you need to pay like maybe like a few $100s, right, then you really experience this for yourself, okay. There will be a lot of anticipation. Oh, I made this reservation so many months ago, whatever it is. Then you go there, right, and then you're like, there's all that one thing and that clinging, right. But if you actually objectively realize it for yourself, right, when you put that food in your mouth and you just savor every single bite. After a while, right, actually the taste just disappears. And then after you swallow it, right, the taste lingers for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then it's gone. And that's actually what the Buddha is talking about when he's saying about how experience is like a bubble. It's like a water bubble and when it's raining, right? And that's why the point about that rain is actually quite important, because he's saying that the bubble, right, lasts for like a split second. It's not a bubble like a soap bubble you see that grows bigger and bigger. It's like when it's raining, right? So the bubble comes and then it just disappears. So whatever that you experience that you're thinking about, right? Oftentimes if you think about actually what was the actual experience, actually it lasted for that very short moment. And there's a parallel example that I can share, right, where Ajahn Brahm was talking about how this monk of his, right, removed his own tooth using pliers. And Ajahn Brahm said, how do you do that? And the monk then said, well, when I went to the workshop, it didn't hurt. When I took the pliers, it didn't hurt. When I put the pliers into my mouth and rested on my teeth, also it didn't hurt. When I pulled it out, yes, it hurt, but it was a very, very short moment. And then it was over. And think about that, right? For most people, when we experience something like this, most of it actually we built on a lot of expectation. Oh, it's going to hurt, it's going to be really painful. And that's actually what causes us to feel upset. But the actual experience itself is actually just a split second. So this is for the negative side. Positive side is the same thing. Whatever happy experience that you feel, oh, you're in love, oh, how wonderful. For those of us who are like very long, you know that okay, it's going to last for like maybe like 1 year max, right? 2 years. After that, reality will sink in. Right? Or good news that happens. Oh, you got a bonus. 3 months later, you're like, oh, you're back to normal. It's very, very transient. So whatever happy experience or unhappy experience you experience is really just for that. It's literally just like a raindrop, right? And so moving on to the third, khandha of perception, right? You see something and the perception actually like colors how you experience things as well, right? What did the Buddha say that it was? The Buddha actually says this about perception. He gives a simile that suppose it's the last month of the hot season, and I don't know whether you've been to India before, but the hot season just before the monsoon is really very hot. In fact, I think this recent hot season they're reporting that in Chennai the humidity is like Singapore, but it's like 44 degrees or something like that right now. So it's like way hotter than we're experiencing now. So imagine the last month of the hot season, around noon time, and a mirage appears, right? And if you were to investigate it, you'll find that actually that mirage doesn't exist. So what the Buddha is saying with this simile of the mirage, right, actually is that your perception, right, you might think that it is real, but actually it's not. That's actually what a mirage is. Right? You're seeing something that appears, right, but actually that thing is not there. You see a pool of water in the middle of the road, you go there, actually there's nothing there, it's just hot road. Right? So that's how the Buddha describes a perception, right? And again, it's void, empty, insubstantial. So what does the Buddha then say about your will? And this is something that most people actually identify with as yourself. Right? This is in Ajahn Brahm's words, is enemy number one, the delusion that you are in control. Right? And this is what the Buddha actually says. Suppose a person needs like hardwood, like meaning like imagine they need like teak wood, right? For example, from scantic, for something like that. You take a chainsaw and you enter a forest, right? And then you see a large banana tree, right? And then you cut it down, you roll off the crown of the banana tree, and then you unroll the coil. And as you unroll the coil, right, you wouldn't even find soft wood, let alone like hardwood. And you realize that actually that banana tree, right, even though it looks as though that it's very solid, it might give you that hardwood, actually there's nothing inside there. So that's how the Buddha actually describes it. And it's the same thing with our will. We think about it, right, we think to ourselves, how often, right, we find that we are unhappy because people order, and then you say, that's not what I want to do. Right? I actually want to do something else. But in reality, that will that you have, right, the wanting to do something else, right, is actually not substantial. What you hold to yourself, right, what you hold as yourself as that will is actually, if you were to unroll it, actually there's nothing solid there, or there's nothing permanent there at all, actually. And the Buddha has got a lot more to say about this whole will business, right? So that's like the will. And then consciousnesses, right? The Buddha actually then describes it as actually a magician performing tricks. So these are the 5 components of existence. Form is likened to being like a lump of foam in the river Ganges. Right? Experience, right, is like a raindrop in a storm. Right? It will just disappear and like go off. This, the third one of perception is like a mirage. The fourth one of like will, right? Actually, it's like an empty banana tree that's got no wood whatsoever. And actually, technically, banana trees are actually not trees, right? They're actually classified as a soft plant of a different sort, right? And then the last one is actually like consciousnesses, like a magician trick. And maybe if I were to just elaborate a little bit about like why consciousnesses, right, is like likened to being a magician trick. It is said by those who experience very deep meditation states that when you actually look at when you come up from the 4 jhanas, for example, and when you come up from that state, right, your mind actually will be very malleable and powerful because it's been purified of a lot of the 5 hindrances, right? And when you actually start to examine your consciousnesses at that point in time, when you look at actually the conscious process, right, what you will actually see is that every moment of consciousness is actually completely conditioned. Ajahn Brahm actually gives the analogy of that. If you imagine that the 6 different consciousnesses, right, are different fruits, and it's like a fruit salad, and the mind consciousness, right, is say coconut, right? Because it's one of my favorite fruits. What actually happens, right, is that every single consciousness experience, right, ends with coconut, and so you then think that actually everything, right, is all continuous. It's a smooth flow. Meaning, for example, that if I were to touch something, right, the sequence, right, will actually be there will be contact, but then what will happen is that your body consciousness will arrive. Immediately it will be followed by the mental consciousness. You know, it's as though that you've got like strawberry, and then strawberry is then followed by coconut. Right? Or you have a very complex experience of strawberry, apple, coconut. Everything ends with coconut, and then you actually imagine that actually everything is just coconut. But it's a bit like a magician playing tricks, like, oh, that coin disappeared, but actually that coin like traveled somewhere else. Right? And the reason why you you don't see that point traveling somewhere else is because that you are actually distracted. The meditation brings your attention to somewhere else, right? And that's actually what consciousness is like. Your consciousness, right, awareness is actually on that mental consciousness because you know that you're known. But in reality, there's actually all these other things that can only be seen, right, when you actually have developed a state of mind where you can actually clearly see that your consciousness has a cause and it has an effect. But that's only for the really deep states of meditation that you actually begin to see that for yourself. And the interesting thing that happens is that once you're able to see that, right, you can't unsee it. That's actually the interesting thing about Buddhism. Once you actually see something, you actually cannot unsee it. And when you see this sequence of consciousness, you'll come to the realization of the Buddha in a different part, where he said that, most people, he actually said, right, okay, coming back to the 5 components of existence, he actually said that it would be better for lay people, right, to actually take your body, right, as yourself, rather than your consciousness. And the reason is because that actually when you're able to see this cause and effect for yourself, you will see that actually the consciousnesses are influenced by there's so many causes that affect it. And every moment of consciousness is actually completely different and conditioned. Think about how your thoughts, right, are quite different now compared to earlier. Or the moment that, say for example that you're afraid of dogs, right, and then the moment that dog comes in, right, your consciousness is completely changed as a result of that. Right? Your mind consciousness becomes changed as a result of that. And that changes so frequently. In contrast, your body, right, is here for 70, 80 years. It's actually quite stable. And that's actually what the Buddha actually said. That if it is actually better to take your body as a self rather than to take your consciousness as a self. Because the mind consciousness is just so fickle. Right? And Ajahn also has another analogy where he said that most people view the consciousness, right, as though that it's like a sand, the beach, it looks like a single continuous, white, stretch of sand, right, from Google Maps. But when you zoom it down, right, you actually see that the beach, right, this continuous white stretch, actually is made of many, many small individual particles. So what we perceive as consciousness as this smooth thing, actually, if you are able to get into that deep state and come out from it, you will see that actually there are individual, discrete things that are all actually, there's a cause to it. It's not continuous. So what you take to be yourself as a consciousness actually is not the right thing to take. But that's for the later, deeper stages. But that's the reason why the Buddha actually describes it as a magician's trick. So there are these 5 things, right? Important thing is actually the next part, right? Where any of these, so this is the Samyutta Nikaya 22.59. So you have your body, you have your experience, you have the perception, you have the will, you have the consciousnesses, right? So what do you do with this? Important thing is actually this. Any kind of body, whatever, right, whether past, future, present, your own or others, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, and this applies to all the other 5 components of existence. Whether is it your body, whether is it your own experience, so think about your own past experiences, right? Whether is it your perceptions, whether is it actually your will, whether is it your consciousnesses, they should be seen with the correct wisdom. This is not mine. You don't, this is, I don't own this thing, right? This, I am not. You're not that, right? And this is actually not my permanent essence. So this is actually how you should actually perceive your 5 components of existence. And the reason why these are the 5 components of existence, right, is that you can actually divide. If you were to think back about how you view yourself, you can actually divide yourself into these 5 components. There's the body, and then the other 4 are actually all the mind. Right? And actually each of these are frequently mistaken to be yourself. Right? And that's actually the cause of the suffering. So this is what is meant by actually the suffering, right, is to be fully understood, because these are actually your 5 components of existence, right, is actually completely intertwined with the reason why you suffer, right? So now we should actually move on to the second truth, right, why we suffer, right? So this is SN56.11. This is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. Why is it that we suffer? It is this one thing that leads to rebirth. It is accompanied by enjoyment and desire, seeking delight now, here and there. That is the wanting that's related to the five senses, the wanting to be, and the wanting of disappearance. So this is what the Buddha said about the origin. Important thing here is actually that if you want something, that is actually the cause of why you suffer. Right. And that is related to the earlier point that we mentioned, right? That all the different kinds of suffering that exist. And that's actually the reason why the five components of existence, right, are so intertwined with suffering. Because each of these, right, they are actually linked to this one thing. They're actually inseparable from this one thing. Right? Your physical form, right? I mean, if you are able to completely separate from it, right, then you should be able to go without food, right? But we all know that actually to not be able to experience food is actually one of the biggest suffering that you can have, right? Or water, or for that matter, whatever it is. Same thing with your experiences, right? Whatever you experience with the six senses, right? There is that one thing that is associated with it, right? The one thing that is pleasing. You want something that's pleasing. And when you experience something that's not pleasing, right, you want to get away from it. That one thing also arises. So that's actually the cause for that suffering that you experience. Right? So I jumped ahead. So if I move on to the Digha Nikaya 22, right, this is also what the Buddha actually said, right? Where does this wanting arise and become established? Wherever in the world there's anything that's agreeable and pleasurable, there's this wanting that arises and becomes established. So this actually talks about this wanting and whatever sight, sound, smells, taste, tangible objects and mind objects in the world that are agreeable and pleasurable, and there this wanting arises and actually becomes established. So the six consciousnesses that are agreeable and pleasurable, and there this wanting arises and becomes established. So the root of this one thing, right, is because that you find something enjoyable and you really love it, right? You really want to experience it again. And that's why you want something, right? And that one thing actually is the cause for your suffering. And this is important, right, especially when it comes to meditation. Right? The moment that you experience suffering, right, like what sometimes it's called vipassana suffering, right? Or samadhi suffering, right? The moment that you go for a retreat, right, and you're not enjoying it, right? The moment that you're experiencing some form of unhappiness or suffering, ask yourself a very important question of what kind of meditation, what do you want actually? It's a very important question, very powerful question to ask yourself in the middle of retreat, because when you ask yourself the question what do you want, and the answer pops up, right? If you are able to let go of that one thing, you'll find that that will actually pave the way for your meditation. The moment that you tell yourself, I want to not think thoughts, that is actually the seed for your own destruction, so to speak. Because that one thing, right, will then go, okay, I want to be still. Why am I not still? How come I'm thinking more thoughts? And you literally, I think I posted a video clip in the Facebook group of my cat chasing her own tail. So the story is actually that my cat, her name is Dharma, she has this habit, right, that she likes to clean herself, right, and when she's annoyed, right, her tail will start to flick, right. So when her tail starts to flick, right, when she wants to clean her tail, then the tail will move away, right, and then she'll get annoyed, which will then cause her tail to flick even more, and she'll get even more annoyed, and literally she'll start going around in a circle. And that actually is exactly how a lot of people meditate, right? When you tell yourself that I want to be still, I don't want to think. Why am I thinking? How come there are more thoughts? Okay, then you start thinking about the past. Oh no, I shouldn't be thinking about that. Oh, I need to bring myself to the present moment. Okay, present moment. I need to do something later on. Yeah, actually I need to settle lunch with my family. Oh, why am I thinking about that? I need to bring myself. And it just goes on like that. Instead, if you just let yourself go, just be kind, be gentle, just let go of that one thing. Whatever thoughts come, okay, sure, just be fine, just be kind, be gentle, just let it be. You'll find that if you just let yourself think, right, the mind will just very naturally come to a stillness. And And that's actually what you want to experience, right? So when I gave the instruction to like pay attention to the silence, right? Don't force yourself to, right? Don't want the silence. Just bring yourself like to the attention. But if you say that there are other thoughts or whatever, just let it be. Just let it be kind, be gentle, right? So Ajahn often says that there are two kinds of meditation. There is second noble truth meditation, and there's third noble truth meditation. Second noble truth, which we just talked about, right? One thing is the origin of suffering, right? And this is when you meditate and you want something, right? And then you're going to suffer. Third noble truth suffering, you don't want anything, and then you enjoy yourself perfectly, right? So that's the third noble truth suffering. So always remember yourself, right? Always ask yourself the question like, if you have problems, what do I want in my meditation? And actually by extension, life. What do you want? What is it that you want, right, that's actually causing you to suffer? What are the problems that you're facing, right? And ask yourself, like, why am I suffering? Maybe first start with understanding that suffering. What's the nature of the suffering? Is it because I want something that is, I want something that's pleasing? Is it that I miss something that's pleasing that's no longer there? Is it that I'm experiencing something that I don't want, which is like the reverse of want? It's a kind of one thing, right? You want something to not be there, right? So that's actually something to reflect on, right? Then once you understand that suffering, right, then you ask yourself the question of like, what is the one thing that is around that suffering? If I were to draw a parallel experience from my work, there was one point in time last year when I was extremely frustrated at work. And my wife actually noticed that, partially because I was overworked. I had a colleague and a boss who went on maternity leave at the same time, and I was like extremely overworked. Right? So partially that had to do with that. But I realized at one point in time when I came back and I was actually feeling extremely unhappy, and I asked myself the question, like, what's the reason why I'm unhappy? And I realized that I was actually identifying myself very much with my work. And there were some plans that I had, right, that were the process of convincing my colleagues, right, was not very smooth. People didn't want to do what I wanted to do. People felt that they were not convinced that, no, this doesn't make any sense at all. And I realized that actually the problem doesn't rest with them, because that's the nature of the five sense world. People will have different views. The problem is because that I was wanting, I was holding on to something. I wanted something to go this way. And this is the one thing where I have, right, that was causing that problem. And that one thing, right, was also building up my sense of self, right? Because you want to do more things, right? That ties in with like this sense of like ego, this sense of self. That actually is the cause of my suffering. And so what was the solution for that? I asked myself like, what is it I wanted? And then after a while I was like, actually, what do I really want? And what can I do to let go of it? And I just very simply just let go of it. I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is not really important. In end of my life, right, I'm not going to look back and go that, oh yeah, I should have fought harder for this or anything like that. No, end of my life, I'll be focusing on the death process. I will not be focused on like work, right? So that's when I realized that, oh, actually it's kind of stupid to like worry about it and just let it go. And that's something that I encourage people to think about for your own troubles as well. When you suffer, understand fully, why is it that you're suffering? What is it that, and the first and second noble truths, what is the suffering? Fully understand it, and then ask yourself like, where is that one thing that is there? Because that one thing is actually like very tiny. Right, so that's like for the more mundane, like everyday kind of like suffering. The other question to ask, right, is actually a more deeper question of your everyday practice. And this is actually that suffering arises because you think that there is an I. And there are these 5 components of existence that are completely impermanent. Right? Your physical form, your body, your experience, whatever past life experiences you have are included. your perception. Oh, this guy like very good, this guy not very good, whatever it is, right? It's all perception. Your will, I want to do something, I don't want to do something. Then your consciousness is. Which of these 5 components of existence, right, do you identify the most, right, as that I? Where do you see, most strongly, right, there is a self in there? And why this is important is that it is because of this sense of self, right, that a lot of the wanting arises, right, that is the cause of the suffering. If you can let go of that, right, you can deal with the root cause, then actually that deals with a lot of the issues, right? So for example, like going back to the experience I had at work again, right, part of it, right, actually a strong part of that suffering, right, was because that I had that attachment to that will. I want to do things in this way, and I think that this is, and I identify myself, right, with like this will. It should be done in this way. Otherwise, I don't want to be part of it, right? It's kind of conceit, right? But that's actually part of the will. And I identify myself very much with that will. And that's actually why the suffering arose, right? So, the path, the Eightfold Path, right, is a constant path of actually constant letting go. And you let go, right, ultimately at the end when you're a fully enlightened being, you let go of this completely of the sense of self. There is no I there, it's just cause and effect, right? So when you're suffering, right, ask yourself, what is it that you're holding on to, right? And maybe in everyday life, right, which of these 5 components do you actually most identify with as the I? And how can you ask yourself, like, what do I want around this, and how do I let go of it? Right, and that's actually how you should actually like practice. So that's actually broadly like how I would see this, and maybe I'll just end this by talking about how what's the cause of suffering, right? And this is Majjhima Nikaya 13. This is Ajahn Brahm's translation, so it's slightly different from the Sutta Central one. With the 5 senses as the cause, the 5 senses as the source, as the basis, and the culprit being simply the 5 senses. Presidents quarrel with prime ministers, politicians with each other, priests with imams, businessmen with householders, parents quarrel with each other and with their children, sibling with sibling. I think that we can all identify with that now, and friend with friend. And here in their quarrels, their brawls, and their disputes, they attack each other with abuse, fists, or lawsuits whereby they incur death, injury, or loss. This is the danger of the 5 senses. It's a massive suffering in this very life. And the root cause actually is literally just these 5 senses. And again, with the 5 senses as the cause, people steal, commit fraud, sleep with each other's partners, abuse children, and when they're caught, they're imprisoned and ruined. And now too is the danger of the 5 senses that, the massive suffering in this very life is caused entirely by these 5 senses. So you can see that the 5 senses, right, you come into being, right, that actually, you come into being because of this one thing from past existences, for example. And it's this one thing that actually fuels future suffering in this very life into very future lives as well, right? So I already covered, like if you want, then you suffer. So I think that maybe I will just leave you all with some guiding questions. Right? I already mentioned the first one, asking yourself over the course of this week, right? Which component of existence do you identify with the most, right? And actually, the question to also ask yourself is that, is it the same, right, at work and outside of work, right? So for example, for myself, I would say that the sense, I'm actually quite consistent. So the will part is very strong, I will fully admit it. My wife will snicker when she's here. I'm quite hard-headed that way. My mother also thinks so. So anyway. But for some people, right, it might be the case that actually at work, if they have built up a very strong professional experience, then experience actually is the biggest sense of self that they identify with themselves. Then at home, it might be something else. It might be, their physical form, for example, if they are very conscious about how they look. or something like that. The question for you is that, what do you identify, what do you see as you, right? What do you see as an I, right? And is this the same at work and also at work? And ask yourself, like, how much has this caused you to suffer, actually? And to try and fully understand it. And what will you need to change, right? What will you need to actually do differently, right? To actually recognize that actually you have no control over this. So for example, my will, right? I think that I'm in control, but in reality, like, if I wake up sick tomorrow, I'm not going to have the same intentions as I had like today. If you have got a very strong sense of professional experience, for example, or you are a lawyer with like 20 years experience, for example, and suppose that life happens and you get a stroke and you can't speak, or you can't even like recognize like concepts, what will happen then? If you are still holding on to that sense of I around that experience, you probably will suffer a lot because you think that I'm in control and you identify yourself so much with that. But what will need to happen, right, for you to actually recognize that that before that happens, right, what will you need to actually mentally imagine, right, to actually let go of that sense of attachment to that will or that I or that experience that's around, that I that's around that experience form or whatever it is. So to give an example of that, in the Buddha's time, there was actually this lady who came to see the Buddha, and so this is not canonical, meaning it's actually not in the suttas, but it's in some of the commentaries. And apparently what happened is that this lady was, when she first went to see the Buddha has this psychic power that he can read minds, right? And he could tell that this lady was actually very attached to her looks. So she was like the hot chick of the town, right? So everybody was like, she was like very vain and conceited. And so when she went to attend the Buddha's Dharma talk, what the Buddha apparently did with his psychic powers was that he recreated her image, almost like a holograph like that, right? He recreated her image that everybody could see, and then he aged it. So she went from being like a beautiful, like 20-something-year-old lady, right, and very quickly like aged to like 70, 80 years old. And that shook her completely because she realized that she was like, oh, this is going to happen to me, right? So for you, right, to think about what is it you identify with, which of these 5 components, what do you need to change, right? What do you need to imagine, for example, right, to actually like lessen that attachment, right, to lessen that suffering, right? And to recognize that you've got no control. And for the practices for the coming week, I recommend for you to keep a journal, and to actually just keep track of like what caused you to be upset in the coming week, to be the most upset, and to actually investigate for yourself what was the root cause of that upsetness. Why were you upset? What were you holding on to that caused you to be upset? What is it that you can let go of? So, and then the other thing to also do is to meditate daily. So I actually post all these, I've actually got the guided meditation by Ajahn Brahm that I'll share on that Facebook group. So please do the practice on a daily basis. Given that we're a small group, any questions that you all have at this point in time? Any questions, any thoughts? Yes. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned that the one thing, clinging of the thoughts that cause suffering, you went through the process of meditation and in a way happy with that few moments of happiness.
Yeah.
So very quickly this ends.
Yes.
So now are we in a suffering state?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So,
well, in that case, we are investing time into a suffering state rather than to put it, go into the meditative state for the rest of the day.
yes. Yeah.
But is it possible?
Is it possible? Okay. suffering only ceases, right, when you become fully enlightened and you actually pass on. So even fully enlightened beings, right, actually still suffer. But like there's a famous simile that the Buddha gave of the two arrows, right, that everybody suffers, right? It's like similar to like being shot with like two arrows. There is the physical arrow and there's the mental arrow of suffering. But for the arahants, right, the enlightened beings, they only have the physical arrow, they actually don't have the mental arrow. So when the only real way to be fully free from suffering is actually to walk the Eightfold Path, right? Such that you're actually able to fully remove the mental arrow of suffering from life. Yeah. And it's interesting because when you can experience this for yourself, the large bulk of our suffering, right, actually comes from the mental arrow, actually. So for example, the monk that I mentioned who like pulled out his own tooth, right? I think that's a perfect example of it. Most of us would imagine that already, we're like wincing, like, wow, pain. But you think about it, right, you're suffering more than he has. Yeah. So a lot of the suffering that we have is actually around the expectations that it's going to hurt, it's going to be painful, and so forth. And getting rid of that, right, requires walking the Eightfold Path. So it's not just about like, oh, we just need to be in a meditative state all the time. Why is it to be in a meditative state while driving, for example? Yeah, I think that would not be very wise, right? Or as Ajahn said, right, there are sometimes that you have to cling on. And he said that if you are traveling on a motorbike in the small streets of Bangkok, right, at the back of the motorcycle, please cling on, don't let go. Right, and I fully agree, right? But the main thing here is actually that to recognize in your daily life, right, when you're suffering, to actually fully, yes, it's true that you can't escape the suffering, and what you should do then in your daily life is to actually really reflect, to fully understand the suffering that happens. And then when you're actually meditating, right, that's when you actually let go of the thing, you let go, and then you actually develop that. Yeah. I hope that answers the
the example of clinging on to and riding as a pillion rider.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. So don't try like, oh, I need to be in a meditative state, and then you just fall off the motorcycle.
More cleaning is required.
In that context, yes. Yeah. But the thing also is to like I said, like in everyday life, when you're clinging, and then there will be the inevitable suffering that will happen, right? To actually use that to fully understand, right? Use that as material to reflect, to contemplate. Then when you're actually practicing your meditation, then when those suffering arises, then you actually practice the letting go. Yeah.
So in that sense, in the work, so long as for you as a professional, you are really clinging on to the motorcycle for 8 hours or 10 hours, and then coming back and then releasing it for a few moments.
So I wouldn't say that I will have to cling, and it depends also on like, so it's also not just about like you cling and then that's it, but how you do so. And for what intentions and motivations, right? Because intention and motivation is actually karma as well. Right? And the important thing actually is not that you're clinging, but how you're clinging, and whether do you take that as like your feedback to take back home to like reflect and things like that. Right? The important thing of like how you cling is to actually do so in accordance to the Eightfold Path. Yeah. So if say that you are clinging on to your daily work, right, but your livelihood is wrong to begin with, then you should reconsider. Right? Should you actually change to a different livelihood where if your livelihood requires you professionally and you have a lot of pressure to like tell lies and that causes harm, right? Then that's something that I wouldn't say that you should just like, oh, I should just do that, and then that's fine.
That means it's outside the precepts, operating within the precepts.
Yeah, so the Eightfold Path is actually the constant guide for how you should cling on. Yeah.
And be conscious of that you are clinging on.
Yes, and to be conscious that actually this is not sufficient by itself, right? Everyday life, right? So oftentimes I hear people say things like, oh, I don't need to meditate, because I'm so busy. But if I'm just mindful of everything I do, then that's enough. Yeah, but that's not enough. The eighth factor of the Eightfold Path is right stillness. And the Buddha specifically talks about actually the 4 jhanas as the sama samadhi, the right stillness. And you cannot get jhanas by like writing emails or like riding a motorbike or doing deliveries, or you can't do that. So actually the last 3 factors of the Eightfold Path are actually very much talking about like meditation practice already. But the earlier parts of like right view leading to right livelihood, those are things that you can probably do on an everyday basis.
The lump of foam that is mentioned, what is the analogy for? Is it one thing?
Analogy of that is actually your body. Your body is actually just like a lump of foam.
Oh.
Yes. So the reason why the Buddha used it as an analogy is that he wanted to actually all 5 analogies for the components of existence is to actually illustrate how each of these this is not mine, this I am not, and it's actually there's no permanent essence to this. Yeah. And the lump of foam example is actually that because a lot of people are very attached to our bodies, right? And we think that it's here to stay. But the Buddha is using this simile to actually emphasize that it's like a lump of foam actually, like on the river Ganges, which is actually a very big river. So a small lump of foam on the river, it will just dissipate over time. Yeah. That's actually what the Buddha is trying to talk about. And we are all lumps of foam. I think that the Ajahn Brahm likes to do this thing in the room, right, where he will ask how many people are around in the retreat. And then we'll give a number. And then he will do a calculation and he say, actually X number of people will be dead by next year. Yeah. And then he will then say, and you don't go and look at the older people because you never know, it could be younger people passing also. But it's true, right? It's like a lump of foam. And actually the point about a lump of foam also is that it's impermanent. And you never know when it will disappear, but it's bound to disappear at some point of the river Ganges. Yeah. Does that help to answer your question?
I have this question.
Yes.
How do you differentiate letting go and ignoring something?
Very good. How to differentiate between letting go and ignoring something? Ignoring something requires you to have the will to want to ignore something. So the motivation is actually quite different. Whereas letting go, right, is actually doing so with kindness, with gentleness, and letting it be, actually. So you don't intentionally want to like park it aside. There's no will involved in letting go, actually. In fact, you will let go of the will, right? Whereas when you ignore somebody, right, so to give an example, suppose that you're meditating, right, and somebody's like talking, right? You let go, right, when you are letting your mind do whatever your mind wants to, and you just go, okay, I notice a sound, just let it be, right? And just kindly, gently, and after some time you'll notice something that your mind will actually just like automatically switch off. You let that process happen by itself. Ignoring it is, okay, there's a sound, I'm not going to hear the sound. And then you notice there's the element of the will that's injected into it, which is quite different. Yeah. So that I think is probably the biggest difference. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then maybe we'll just call it a day for today.